Look, I'm just a geologist. I like rocks. I love rocks.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Geology Flannelcast. My name is Steve.
Hello, everyone. I am Chris.
Greetings and tidings. I'm Jesse. It's a new year. It's a new me.
I like it.
Yeah.
Tidings.
Tidings. How long have you been thinking about that one for?
3 seconds.
All right.
Tides. I wonder if that segues nicely into our. No, it doesn't. Tides have nothing to do with rivers.
They could go up the river a little, away.
I guess.
In the coastal zone.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you can get tides and rivers.
Yeah, the Delaware River here in Philadelphia is tidal.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Geology Flannelcast. If you haven't picked up on it already, our topic today is river systems.
Woo!
And, I'm just going to have some fun with this one. We kind of picked, we haven't done a topic in a really, really long time, kind of like dedicate a whole show to a topic. So we are going to do that today, going back to our roots, kind of have some fun. We got a little outline here, planned topics we want to talk about. We'll see what we get into. Got some fun facts about rivers. You'll probably learn at least one thing today, hopefully.
I know I will.
Yeah, I know I will too.
That's how I go into every show thinking, I'm going to learn something tonight.
Exactly. I love it.
And then you finish up just feeling disappointed, and as you walk away, like, that's such potential.
I actually lose information.
We are all now a little bit dumber after that. Thank you. May God have mercy on your soul.
Yeah, exactly.
All
Thank you,
right.
Billy Madison. There's our first 90s reference of the day.
That's it. That's the first 1990s reference of the day. There you go.
There you
Well, once again, welcome everyone. So actually, we should probably talk about this before we start to record, but you just want to jump right into the river thing? Do we have any news stories?
No, let's
Just,
Yeah. Go ahead, Jesse.
I was going to say I got a few, but I didn't really. I was saving it all for this topic. I got the Earth is spinning faster.
I saw that.
Talk about it next week.
Yeah, I have a few topics too, but again, I didn't go too in depth in them because I was super stoked about rivers. But
well, what's the Earth spinning? Can we talk about this Earth spinning? What's it? Earthquake or something like that?
No. It's it has to do with like atmospheric pressure, tidal flows. Like it's a bunch of different things that coalesce, and it's now spinning faster than it has in the last 50 years. Normally we have a leap second where we add a second.
Yeah.
This year it's spinning so fast and might actually delete a second.
Oh, well, we will talk about that next week because I'm actually interested in that one.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other stories we talk about on here that I don't care about at all. And I just phone it in.
Care about it?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's definitely talk about that next week.
Yeah.
So there's your I don't know, not a spoiler alert? No, what would we call that?
Teaser.
Thank you. Here's your teaser for next week. We'll talk about the Earth, the day getting faster. Cool. All right. So let's jump into rivers.
Also, next week, we're going to talk about the greatest geological topic of all time.
Oh.
I don't know what that is yet, but I just thought I'd throw another teaser out there.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's just lying to you right now. Alternative facts right there.
I can't wait.
All right.
No, there was enough news this week on the planet to fill up our news cycle. So let's just go with a regular old topic this week, I think.
All right. Sounds good. Who wants to kick things off with this?
We're going to talk about rivers.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to leave it up to Chris and Jesse.
All right. So, I actually have a fun. I'm kind of jumping ahead. I'll wait. I got little fun facts about today's topic, kind of peppered in here. So we'll get to that. But I don't know. Do you want to start off, Steve, or what?
No.
Okay. So,
well, all right. Let's real quick. Let's talk about our website now has more merchandise.
Oh yeah. We should
real quick. Like we are going to talk about rivers. I want to jump into it, but just real quick, if you go to our website www.geologyflannelcast.com, we're now selling shirts and hoodies and mugs and stickers, and check it out. This is our first foray into t-shirts, so take a look. If you think we can improve upon it, send us a email or leave a comment or something like that. But yeah, we're dipping our toe in the commercial pool, if you will. So
well, we've been promising t-shirts since 2014.
Oh yeah, it's happening.
It is. I think in 2014, I think we said they were going to be free. They're not free.
They're not free, but
no. they're not expensive.
I mean, we promised t-shirts by 2016, and it only took us till 2021. No, before we got them right before we got it up and running, just at the very one of the last days of 2020.
I'm going to say 2020.
It's probably the best thing that happened in 2020 was us getting our t-shirts.
Let's face
the website.
It's a low bar, but yeah, I think you're right. I think this is probably the best thing that's ever happened in 2020.
So, check out geologyflannelcast.com, click on the merch link, and you can see all sorts of fun stuff up on there, and it helps us out a little bit with the podcast, and you get some cool stuff out of the deal too. So.
Yeah, and that should flow us right into our topic of rivers.
Rivers. All right. So with
like
rivers,
a segue machine.
So rivers are really simple, right? And this is your non-scientific definition of a river. And it's basically just, it's where all the water flows. That's about as unscientific as it gets, but
channelized flow of water.
And one of the main things driving rivers is gravity. Basically, this is very simple. Water flows downhill.
Ooh,
most of the time.
Hang on.
Wait, what?
Huh?
One of the main things driving rivers is gravity.
Mm-hmm.
What about precipitation?
Well, there we go. That's very good. You stopped me there. I skipped a step there because we have to first talk about the hydrologic cycle before we get into rivers. Rivers are a very big part of the hydrologic cycle. So I don't want to spend too much time on the hydrologic cycle because that's kind of like the boring part of this. But so first you have your water on Earth, and it evaporates. We get that. We turn it from liquid water into water vapor. So we have evaporation, or another process called transpiration, and that's when plants give off water vapor. And so it gets that water vapor into the atmosphere. That water vapor condenses, falls back down to the ground in the form of precipitation. Rain, snow, sleet, whatever. Any way that water flows back down to the ground.
And just real quick, what us scientists like to cheat and just call all the water that leaves the system, we just call it evapotranspiration. That way you don't have to worry about, is it evaporation? Is it transpiration? We just call it evapotranspiration. Just anything that's like now going into the sky.
Yep. Thank you for jumping in there.
I just want to do it. I'm going to jump in here.
All right.
Do a side note. So the Earth has not always had precipitation. Dun, dun, dun.
Was it on strike or something?
Yeah, way back when.
Union.
This is me talking again about the early Earth. It was so hot. How hot was it? It was so hot. Liquid water couldn't exist.
Yeah. So it was just too hot.
Yeah. So all of the water
couldn't condense.
Yeah, was in the atmosphere as water vapor. And then eventually, as the Earth cooled off, after its formation, it eventually got cool enough where it could condense, and then it rained, and it rained, and it rained for a few years.
It was probably a lot more than a few years.
Yeah. Several tens of thousands to probably hundreds of thousands of years. And then all of that rain filled up all of the oceans and the rivers. And
that's like England.
Yeah.
Seattle. Worse than Seattle.
Yeah. Fast forward, here we are.
All right. Wow, thanks for adding that in there.
Yeah.
So to finish off the hydrologic cycle, so we talked about evapotranspiration, precipitation. Now the stuff precipitates, and and then we have runoff / infiltration, and that's when that's actually kind of what we'll be talking about today. Is that part of the hydrologic cycle of this water moving across the land into the oceans? Or infiltration is when the water goes into the ground and it moves via groundwater flow. So we're not going to talk about the groundwater
Boo.
at all today.
That's
right?
my favorite part.
I think.
But
Well-
no, just infiltration versus overflow runoff. Think of like the earth, the soil, your lawn, whatever. Think of it as a sponge. When it first starts to rain, you don't really have any runoff because that sponge is now absorbing it all. But at some point, that sponge becomes saturated and it can't hold anymore. And then everything else that lands on it just runs right off, runs into the street, runs into the river, whatever. So, but yeah, groundwater is like, that's where my bread and butter lies. That's what I deal with most of the time in my job. But we don't have to talk about that, I guess.
Well, I guess.
No, I'm kidding. No,
No,
when we're talking about rivers and the hydrologic cycle, groundwater, eventually the water that is in that sponge does end up in the rivers. It just ends up in the rivers much, much more slowly.
To play devil's advocate, you could also say that not all portions of the earth act like a sponge. They may have impermeable surfaces.
Yes, like
especially Walmart parking lots.
Bedrock, even asphalt to a certain extent. Yes, even lawns are like 85% impermeable. Like,
are they really that much?
Yeah, it's only like 15% gets absorbed. So yeah, I mean, it's 15% versus 0, but
have you guys seen the asphalt that absorbs water?
Yeah. I've seen porous concrete and stuff too that allows the water to infiltrate down. It still has the structural strength, but it has the open pore space that allows the water to get through.
I mean, the impermeability of concrete and asphalt and things like that is a huge problem in many urban areas, especially
urban streams, erosion.
Yeah, well, even just like flooding, if it can't infiltrate, it's got nowhere to go, especially places that don't get a lot of rain. So like it's a really big problem in Las Vegas because when they do get rain, it usually just dumps all at once, and now you have all this concrete, and so there's no place for it to go, and so they actually have these big channels built under the road. If you ever look into it, it's actually really cool. It's like an engineering feat.
Neat.
Yeah,
because you figure that. Go back into my sponge analogy, that sponge holds that water for a certain amount of time and then it slowly drains out. Mm-hmm. And that's what keeps your rivers from overflowing every single time you have a rain event, because it gets absorbed into that sponge and then it slowly drains back into the rain. So if you've ever, next time it pours where you live, take a look. When it's pouring, yes, your creeks and rivers are going to rise, but even after it stops raining, your creeks and rivers are still up that high, maybe even may get a little bit higher depending upon how much impervious surface you have. If you have a lot of impervious surface, your peak is going to be real close to the peak rain. But if you have not a lot of impervious surface, I guess a lot of pervious surface,
permeable.
Permeable. Thank you.
Yeah.
Then your creeks and streams and rivers will actually peak a little bit later because all of that groundwater is then flowing back into that creek after the fact.
Well, that's what rivers like too. Yeah, that's what they can. It's like stretching out that water. The water is going to go through that stream eventually, right?
Yes. If
you're do it all at once, or do you stretch it out and get little by little?
Right. Like electricity, it's like a capacitor. So you're storing that stuff for a little bit longer and then allowing it to dissipate.
Yeah. Cool. So how about where are we keeping this water at? We talked a lot about
I'm a prepper. I have 250,000 gallon drum in my basement.
You have a swimming pool just in case you run out of water? We swim it, we bathe in it once in a while.
Yeah.
But,
No. Come on. That's what my gray water's for.
So on Earth, we don't have that much fresh water. All right. So 96.5% of the water on Earth is stored in the ocean. That comes as no surprise, right? Oceans are huge. 1% of the water on Earth is in saline lakes and groundwater. Now, let's see. Then 2.5% of the water on Earth is freshwater, and so that's the water that's important to humans, right? That's the stuff that we drink and keeps us alive and happy. So of all that, we're only able to use 2.5% of that water on Earth.
Oh man, that's great. That's so much water.
Deer Park, that's good
Oh
water.
man, we have nothing to worry about.
Yep.
Well, it gets even better, gentlemen, because of that 2.5% that we can actually use to stay alive, 68.6% of that is locked up in glaciers. So
Or glaciers.
glaciers.
Yeah.
I guess
Glaciers.
as the climate warms, that number's going to go down. So it's like he says.
The problem with that, the number's going to go down.
It's going to go in the ocean, though.
It's going in the ocean.
I was just about to say, if we look on the bright side of things, of us all dying from climate change, at least we won't be.
No.
But not even that.
No. So,
well, that's a real bummer. I'm going to log off now.
All right. Jesse's
Take
going to
care.
cry himself to sleep right now. Jesse's going to start prepping. He's going to get his 200,000 gallon tank.
Yeah.
Water.
I'm going to turn the hose on and try and fill my basement up.
All right. So let's see. 68.6% in glaciers of the 2.5% of freshwater. Then we have 30.1% of that is in groundwater. So, okay. Groundwater is a major resource for we call potable water or drinkable water, the stuff that we use. So cool. We can tap into that. In surface water and freshwater, surface water and other freshwater bodies make up a 1.3%. So,
Which is crazy. Think about like the Great Lakes, like all the lakes on the planet is 1.3%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not much.
Plus all the rivers too. In that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the rivers, the rivers are big. I guess obviously we'll get into the world's biggest rivers, but the world's biggest rivers are gigantic. But I don't know if anybody's ever seen a Great Lake. Like it's
pretty great.
You can't see across it. Like it's like an ocean. Like
they get pretty big waves too.
Yeah, they do. I've been in storms on the Great Lakes and it's terrifying.
I mean, the Edmund Fitzgerald sunk.
Yeah.
Big freighter.
When was that? That was a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was still a big ship.
Was
Yeah.
that
one of those big freighters?
Yeah, there were some like hurricane type storms that have hit the Great Lakes.
1975.
Okay.
It was 728 feet long.
Jeez,
wow.
Louise.
It's a big boat.
I guess you just looked it up right now.
Yeah, Lake Superior.
That was my next question. Okay.
I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if that just came off the top of Jesse's head, but
Yeah.
oh yeah, the Evans Fitzgerald over 700
You don't know
feet
that,
long.
you peasant? Come on.
That's a big boat. I'm just looking at some
It's a
pictures.
ship. It's not a boat. It's a ship.
Look at you, Mr. Nautical.
All right.
So
So now we can further break this stuff down. Actually, we don't even have to. I have on the notes here.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
Snow and ice makes up most of that.
All right. So of the 1 point. So here's okay. Let's recap now. Fresh water on Earth is 2.5% of all the water. Okay. Of that 2.5%, surface water and lakes, other freshwater features are the 1.3% of the 2.5%, right? And of that 1.3% of surface water, I'm waving my arms around right now. Nobody can see me. 73.1% of that is snow and ice.
Now, I do have a question about this.
Okay.
Because 68.6% is in glaciers, but then snow and ice makes up 73.1% of that other 1.3%.
Yeah,
so
I was wondering about that.
snow and ice, I guess technically it's not like glacial.
Because I know like in the alpine environment on the mountains and stuff like that, you can get snow fields and snow packs, and it's it actually takes a while for that ice to turn into a glacier. It has to get compressed, and you can go through different types of ice.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that. Like the Sierra Nevadas, like for California, I don't know, maybe you've heard of this. Like it's a big deal if they don't get a lot of snow, because when that snow doesn't happen, then the spring melt doesn't happen, and then they run out of water. So it's not technically a glacier, but it is still snow and ice. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's all.
Okay.
So most of that 1.3% is snow and ice.
Yes. And then going down the list, then we got 20.1% is in lakes. So you think of all the lakes in the world, like we said, the Great Lakes and all that stuff. We still got more fresh water locked up in snow and ice. Surficial water, we should say.
Yeah.
Locked up in snow and ice. And then we do lakes. Excuse me.
Second time today. We should call the Great Lakes the Glakes.
The Glakes.
Yeah, the Glakes. I love it. Oh, what are you doing this summer? I'm just gonna vacation at the Glakes.
Vacationing at the Glakes. Yeah. We should copyright that. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. The Glakes.
Yeah, that'll be the next T-shirt I design.
Yeah.
Some of our Patreons are frantically trying to get the glakes.com website.
All right, so going down. Okay, our Patreon friend Maddie, she's on it. All right, cool. Soil moisture is at 3.5%. Let's say swamps 2.5%.
I can't believe swamps is more than rivers.
Yeah.
Our Patreon Maddie already has glakes.com. $2,400 to buy that. We're gonna need more Patreons. But
well, so I want to. The one thing now, I guess, when I took these numbers, it didn't say if it was volume or surface area.
That's a good question. Yeah,
and that could be the deal breaker right there.
I'm guessing it has to be volume because atmosphere is in that number.
Yeah. Okay. Rivers surprisingly do not make up that much of the fresh water on Earth. And then at little minute amounts, biological water. You guys know what that could be?
Yeah, it's humans' water sacks.
If you squeezed us, put us in a...
Yeah, if you squeeze all biological life out, that would be 0.22% water.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And then the atmosphere is also
that's mostly a stat for like aliens when they come and take us over.
Yeah, harvesting us. Yeah. We can just get a little bit of fresh water out of these these people.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's not, if you're stranded in the desert with like your buddy, it's not worth it to try and like squeeze water out of them.
No.
Unless you're like Dracula, vampire, you know.
Oh, good point.
You know, you might get a little water out of the blood.
Well, it's probably, I mean, you're mixing it with blood, so it's much more.
You're rolling the dice with that one too. So that's
anywho, from vampires to drainage basins. Speaking of drainage, hi-oh! See what I did there?
I liked it a lot.
Yeah, but real quick, I'd like to talk about the fact that we have this outline in a nice Word document.
Huh.
Where are you going with this, Steve?
I'm just, I'm Chris. How did you figure out how to format this Word document?
It looks like you have this down pat. There's a formula.
Yeah, look at there's bullet points and sub bullet points and highlights and font changes. Where'd you learn all that, Chris?
Well, the font changes were accidental, but
it drives me a little crazy that the bullet points, some are circles and some are squares.
Well, it would have been better if I would have given this to the formatting formula.
Oh, that's true. That's very true.
So
we'd like to thank our sponsor, the formattingformula.com, formattingformula.com, or YouTube/C/formatting formula for all of your Word document formatting needs. Honestly, I feel like it was a good like month in a row where I was talking about how I went to the formatting formula with a specific problem, and they specifically answered it very like quickly, efficiently, and just their depth and breadth of knowledge when it comes to Word documents, just the things that you could do that I didn't even like fathom were possible. Anything you want to do with Word, they know how to do it. They know how to change your we're talking about simple things like bullet points right now, but fonts and table of contents and hyperlinks and even customizing your toolbar at the top of the page to, you have something that you do all the time. You do this and this and this. They can customize your toolbar. So it's just, all those things are just right there. So you don't have to do anything. They also have, they tell me all the time, like, oh, all you have to do is hit Alt Shift F4 27-3 and tap your elbow, and something happens magically, and it's amazing. So obviously, that's the tap your elbow thing is specific to the Flannelcast, but I don't want to give away all their magic. But if you check them out on YouTube, you can learn to do it yourself. Again, that's YouTube/C/formatting formula. Check them out. Honestly, they have all different kinds of versions of Word too. So if you're an Apple person or, regular old
PC.
Joe like us, check them out. They have all different versions, all different things. Can't say enough about them. Formattingformula.com. Check them out.
All right. So thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
On to the next topic we got here, drainage basins. Before we get into, I guess we are still talking about rivers, but there's this term called a drainage basin. And a drainage basin is basically the area that captures the water for a river. So kind of how you can think of that is there's a certain area out there. And usually the drainage basins, before I get into this next thing I want to say, the drainage basins are divided, or they're bordered by topographic highs. And that's kind of what constrains the drainage basin. Right?
Ooh, real quick.
Yes.
Think about it. Back to our Jurassic Park episode.
Okay. Where is this going?
You have Jeff Goldblum put a drop of water on his hand.
Yeah.
And one drop goes down this knuckle, down this finger. The other drop goes down the back of his hand. That is your drainage basin. One is the front of your hand. One is the back of your hand. So
his knuckles are the drainage divide.
Exactly. Yeah. So that continental divide, sometimes it's called, because usually it's like, if you split that whole drainage basin based on a continent, then you call that the continent divide. So
yeah, you can think of if you're standing somewhere and if it rains over an entire area, if that rain, it's a defined area, and any water that falls in that area will end up in the river if it's surface water.
Yeah, and
it could also infiltrate.
But. So yeah, on the East Coast, sometimes there's actually signs on the highway like, you are now entering the Chesapeake Bay drainage basin, or you're now entering the Delaware River drainage basin. Like, sometimes they have big signs like that, because if you're a trucker hauling something god awful and you have an accident, what drainage basin you might be polluting.
I don't think that's why they have those signs, but
I on highways, I'm not so sure that's not why.
Especially if the drainage basin is a small drainage basin. You see this in central Pennsylvania. If it's a small drainage basin that feeds into a reservoir, they'll have like signs that say, drainage basin area, if spill, call this number.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Because they want to protect, like
And I want to say there was a really big push in the Chesapeake Bay, probably in the 90s, because it had become so polluted, and it's still pretty polluted. They're doing a pretty good job.
They've done a good job cleaning it up. But
we're doing a really good job. But part of that was making it known to people upstream, like in northern Pennsylvania, that their waste or their water pollution ends up in the Chesapeake Bay. And so I think that's part of their campaign.
That may have been part of the initiative, like seen on 76 signs that say like, you're now in the Chesapeake Bay drainage basin.
Bay drainage basin billboards are huge.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Delaware, they're like cardboard pizza
doesn't
box.
Get the love.
Yeah.
So you could get a storm. So say you're in the Rockies, right? So you're Rocky Mountain National Park, right? And storm's coming through, the rain's coming down. You could literally be on one mountain, and on one side of the mountain, the water from that storm will flow into the Pacific Ocean, and on the other side of the mountain, on the other side of the divide, the rain will flow into the Gulf of Mexico, ultimately down the Mississippi River and that way. So
yeah.
Depending on where you're at, you know, you can get same mountain, different sides. The water goes into different spots. So
yes, I've definitely stood on the Continental Divide and went to the bathroom.
Very good. So you're the reason. Your pollution right there is.
Listen, I'm in the woods. I have to go to the bathroom. Like a little bit goes to the Pacific, a little bit go to the Atlantic. Just spreading the wealth.
Yes, yeah. I like that.
Just showing your class. Just
yeah, essentially. Yes.
And the next topic. So that's what a drainage. The drainage basin is just the area of capture of water for a river. Ultimately, all the water that any type of precipitation that flows within the drainage basin will flow. That's the area of capture for the river.
And so drainage basins can change and do change over time with erosion. Because if you're lower these topographic highs, you're changing how the water flows and I mean, it's all gravity, so it's not overly complicated trying to figure it out, but you can have a ridge line that erodes, and if it erodes down far enough, you could have a river that changes course because its drainage basin has changed so much.
Yeah, that has happened, where you have rivers that flow backwards. Flow backwards, meaning they were flowing a different direction.
And so we refer to this sometimes as stream piracy, right? Where
tis be true.
If a river starts capturing from a different drainage basin due to say, this is the city of Chicago dealt with this. Sorry, I'm getting on a tangent here, but the city of Chicago dealt with this in the late 19th century. It became it was a railroad hub, and they had all of the stockyards were in the city of Chicago because they brought all the cattle and whatnot from the Great Plains, and so they basically had a lot of pollution. Stockyards are very polluted, or they cause a lot of pollution, and that was causing Lake Michigan to become very polluted because everything sort of runs into Lake Michigan. And so what they ended up doing was basically lowering. They essentially dredged out the Chicago River and changed the topography so that instead of draining into Lake Michigan, it now drained out of Lake Michigan. So instead of carrying all of the pollution into the lake, it carried it what was now downstream into Illinois and Indiana, which, bummer for the people now downstream because they're dealing with all that pollution. But all they did was change the divide.
Mm-hmm.
They lowered the topography, so all of that surface water ran in a different direction.
Yeah, we talked about like Lake Piranha.
Wow.
Was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
Like the last episode, or whatever. It was a real recent one. Yeah,
but it's
how that made the lake was drained by accident, anthropogenically drained into the salt mine, and it was it was down, the base level was lower, and the Gulf of Mexico was draining into Lake Piranha.
Yep. And you think about at least I did. I always thought everything ends up in the ocean. Well, you do have spots where the rivers drain down and then they don't make it to the ocean, like Great Salt Lake. Yeah.
Jinx.
Yeah. So.
So what they call those is a word, sinks, waters. Is it I want to say there was there's a term for that, but it's
where there's no outlet.
Yeah, there's no out. It doesn't drain into the ocean.
Restricted basin.
Restricted. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I always call it.
Mm-hmm. So but it's not all water ultimately flows into the ocean. Once in a blue moon, you get some smaller areas, and that's why the Great Salt Lake is so salty. There's no outlet. Everything just kind of flows into there. And
I thought I was just angry.
It's
Where's your crickets, Chris?
I'm working on them. All right, so we see we have drainage space. I don't know. I'm just trying to move through this.
I'm just trying to keep this podcast on task.
Try to, we're doing great today. We're like
A level of professionalism. Carry on.
we're like 70% professional today,
which is up.
which is
high.
exponentially up usually compared to what we've had in the past. All right, so in a river system, you get these different zones in terms of sediment. What's going on with your sediment? Because rivers.
So a lake is called an endohetic lake that doesn't have a drainage.
Oh, say that one more time. What was that?
Endoretic lake.
Endoretic. Okay, there you go.
That's from our Patreon, Maddie. Thank you.
Yeah, and endoreic.
Endoreic.
I was muted there for a second, and I was trying to unmute it. I was like, couldn't find my. I was like, no.
Why is Steve saying it wrong?
Endoreic.
Cool. Thank you, Maddie.
Yes.
The Flannelcast fact checker right there. And by the way, Maddie just set up glakes.com. What was it? glakescom.wordpress.com. So
yes.
It was very impressive how fast she set that up.
Like in minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely pictures of lakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Pretty soon, everybody's going to be listening to Maddie's podcast.
Mm-hmm. So rivers move around a lot of sediment. So if you've ever seen a river in flood stage, it has this like brown, icky color to it, and it looks like really gross. But that's just what's happening there is that rivers, just when it's in flood stage, it's very energetic and it's moving around a lot of sediment. And so, but just on a like a nice like normal day when we don't have a storm, it's not in flood stage. The river will look clearer, a bluish or a greenish color or whatever. But rivers are moving around a lot of sediment. So we have these different zones in regards of what's going on with the sediment for the river. So at the headlands, like basically we're talking about like where the river starts. Rivers, like theoretically, your textbook river you'll see like in whatever Geology 101 textbook you're looking at starts in the mountains. All right, it's coming. The water is basically draining off the mountains, and so we call that the headlands, or basically where the river starts. All right, so we have this area called the zone of sediment production. And so what's happening is in your textbook river system, you're coming off the mountains, and the mountains are shedding lots of sediment. We've talked about this before in the podcast. We talked about several mountain systems being formed, and mountains. We always talk about when mountains are uplifted or they're growing. When mountains are actively growing, they're being uplifted at a faster rate than they're being eroded down. As soon as mountains start coming up, they start eroding, and they start just shedding sediment like crazy. Mother Nature hates mountains. She wants to flatten them all. So anyways, in this area, in the headlands, we are close, theoretically in your perfect river textbook situation, this is where you're in the mountains, and this is where the mountains are shedding the sediment, and the rivers are taking that sediment and it's kind of collecting it in the headlands.
So
go ahead.
They're also, because they're at higher elevation, they're steep. And so you have the rivers are flowing downhill faster because gravity's pulling them down. Mm-hmm. So you have all of the sediment and you have all of this energy in the water itself to pick up and carry that sediment.
Yeah, think of it like a pressure washer versus like a weak hose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weak.
So the faster the water is moving and running, the more energy it has, it'll move larger amounts of sediment with that higher energy setting.
Yes.
So now when you move down gradient, we're getting away from the headlands, away from the mountains, theoretically. It turns into what we call the zone of sediment transport. And that's when your sediment is moving through these sections called trunk streams. And this is where your river starts to look more of like the typical river that you might see. You might see like the Mississippi River, how it's a main there's like a main channel coming down.
Yeah, so all these little tributaries are already
Mhm.
they're coming together, and now you got this one big mamba jamba heading downstream.
Yeah, and so in those areas, so the gradient flattens out. It's not as steep as it would be up in the mountains. So you're not getting the sediment production. The rocks aren't breaking down, and most of the stuff that's most of the sediment that's in the system, it stays in there. It's just being pushed along, pushed downstream. It's almost like you're in the zone of sediment transport. It's just transporting the sediment. So then, and then as you move further downstream to where your river flows into a large standing body of water, whether it be most of the time, let's just say it's an ocean for, in your textbook, Geology 101 example. What happens is when the river hits the ocean or a larger, like a gulf or a bay or whatever you want to say, it's almost like the river, when it flows into that larger body, it's almost like it hits a brick wall, right? And it kills the velocity. And as a result, the river loses energy. And so when it loses energy, it dumps off all this sediment, plop. And this is where we start to get, river deltas forming. All right, just all that sediment that came off of the river, plop, can't be moved anymore. And so you can get these river deltas forming. This sediment that gets deposited can get moved around by wave action. Sometimes get moved far offshore by ocean currents, but it basically what happens is in this zone of sediment deposition, when this water reaches this larger standing body, the river reaches this larger standing body of water, it's all about just dumping the sediment and just getting rid of it. So those are the kind of, you can say it like the three zones, or kind of like what's explaining how the river is treating sediment in its journey from eroding off of being weathered down and eroded off of the parent rock and just being dumped off somewhere else. And that's kind of one of the main stages, or that's a main process on how we get sedimentary rocks forming. So that's important in basically in several fields of geology.
Yeah, you either get the river, the flood plains, like when you have a flood, and then the river's overbank, and then you get all this mud depositing down, and you get this mud deposits, or you actually get the deposition in the oceans. It's basically like Chris said, Mother Nature hates topography, so it's buzz sawing down all these mountains. But when I don't know how many of you do woodworking, but when you chop stuff, you end up with sawdust. That sawdust has to end up somewhere. And that's essentially what Mother Nature is doing.
Yeah. Mother Nature's getting rid of the sawdust.
Yeah.
Dumping it downstream into an ocean.
There you go.
But you shouldn't dump your trash in the ocean. That's not what we're saying here at the Geology Flannelcast.
The takeaway here.
Yeah.
I guess you could dump the rocks in the ocean. That's fine. That's what Mother Nature's doing, but please properly dispose of your waste.
Yeah. Even too much sediment is bad.
Yeah.
The number one pollutant in all of rivers is sediment.
And that's part of the problem with the Mississippi now, is that the rivers naturally carry sediment, but they also naturally flood. And so when they flood, they go outside the banks of the channel and they dump that sediment because they lose the energy. The energy is inside the channel. And so they lose that energy. And so they dump the sediment that's in the water. And, that's how you replenish the floodplain. And that's why you get early agriculture along, say, the Nile or the Tigris and the Euphrates back in the day. It's because it would annually flood or semi-annually flood, and it would add these natural nutrients to these fields. But we've manipulated and manhandled the Mississippi River to prevent flooding. We've built man-made dikes, and so now the river can't flood, and so it just collects sediment, and that sediment just collects more and more as it moves downstream and collects more from other little tributaries. That by the time it gets to the Gulf of Mexico, it's depositing a higher volume of sediment than it naturally would. And that's why you have this big dead zone right at the Gulf of Mexico, right at the Mississippi Delta. Because, fish and other little sea creatures, they don't care for that sediment.
Well, there's one of the other reasons for these dead zones, and it's actually scary if you look at the amount of dead zones along like the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. You'd be stunned how many of these documented dead zones there are. A lot of it also has to just do with pollutants in the river itself too, coming out. And
too many nutrients.
But the one thing that people may not know, you might think like, okay, why is it really bad if there's like a lot of silt in the river? Who cares? How is that polluting? Like that's natural, you know? Well, what ends up happening is it clogs fish gills up. So then basically if there's too much sediment, the fish can't breathe. All right. And then they die. So it's basically, if there's too much sediment in the water, it can suffocate fish.
Yeah. And I threw that stat out that sediment is the number one pollutant. And it, again, like Chris just iterated that, who cares? Well, no, like when you're doing construction, like you see all those silk fences and you may see those hay bales and you may see all this extra stuff and you're like,
so you should see these you'll see these like around construction sites, these tubes, and sometimes you just fill the tubes up with leaves or
mulch or and it's
that's to stop the sediment coming off of the construction sites. You take off all the vegetation and when it rains, you just see all the sediment getting dumped down.
Exactly. And if that sediment dumps into the river, like Chris said, it kills the fish, it kills the wildlife, and and then you have devastation downstream. And for, I don't know, almost centuries, nobody really thought about that. Now we're really recognizing that is a huge issue. And now whenever you do any sort of construction, you need to have what's called a sediment plan or, runoff plan or, sediment transportation plan, some sort of plan to mitigate the runoff from your construction site to make sure that sediment does not end up in the creeks or rivers.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could see, even with all this stuff in place to avoid getting the sediment to go into the creeks and rivers and what the surrounding streams, it still happens. I mean, just about every time, if you ever walk past a construction site, like I said, if they're digging stuff up, they remove the vegetation, and anytime there's a thunderstorm, the runoff is just pulling that sediment off, right? That sediment's being transported, and you can actually see the brown runoff coming off of these construction sites. So like you see it a lot in the summertime if you're in an area that gets like pop-up thunderstorms, like by where I live, all the time, just these construction zones, as much as they try to stop this, I don't think that there's a way you can stop it 100%. You still see it kind of coming off of the construction site.
And that's not okay. You got to figure out a way to stop it. If you're manhandling or manipulating this topography, you need to figure out a way to keep it as natural as possible. Mm-hmm. So, and yes, is it pretty much impossible? Yes, but you got to try. You got to try as best you can, because this, erosion and sediment control is a big deal. It is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there's a couple different patterns that rivers and streams make on the surface. We call these drainage patterns. And so there's a bunch of these drainage patterns. We're just going to hit you guys want to hit the most common ones? I think we should
I don't even teach it when I teach it. I'm like, they make different patterns based on geology. Look at it on your own time.
And honestly, like a radial pattern. Yeah. If you have like a volcano.
Yeah. Well,
sorry.
We can go.
Okay. Well, carry on.
So
I was picking the least probable pattern.
So before we get into this, I just want there's other types of drainage patterns here, but this is really hard to talk about on a podcast too. This is one of those things like we need visuals here. So, I'm sorry, but we're going to go over this. We're going to mention some of these, the most common ones, but we're just going to do this really fast because it's, like I said, it's not easy to do this just verbally. So maybe we'll do something later on, or probably not, but this is just, I want to try to do this in 30 seconds. So
yeah. We're going to teach Chris animation and he's going to dial it up and put it on YouTube.
Sure. Just add it to the list of everything else.
Yep.
Right? Okay, so let's start off with the most common one, dendritic. All right, a dendritic drainage pattern. It looks like I always describe it as like if you look at like what human nerve cells look like, how it's all kind of like bushy, and then it kind of crunches down into a single trunk.
Yeah,
Is that a good way to describe it?
Think of a leaf as
leaf.
as a leaf goes out, the veins of a leaf go out. Think of it the other way around. The veins of a leaf are coming back to the center.
Mm-hmm. So you have lots of tributaries and everything's flowing into a main trunk.
Yep.
That's probably one of the hardest ones to describe without visuals, but it's like the most common type of drainage pattern that rivers make. And then the next we have radial. Steve, go ahead. You mentioned you wanted to talk about radial.
Radial, basically you have...
I don't want to steal your thunder over here,
No, you have one central topographic high, like a mountain or a volcano, and the rain is raining down, and there is no one specific direction, like not everything's going off to the left or going off to the right. It's actually going off in a 360-degree pattern around this topographic high. So they call it radial because it's like radians of an arc and just going off in every direction.
Mm-hmm. So by the way, this stuff is these are all tectonically derived. So basically it can either like the bedrock, what type of geology do we have here, or what type of tectonic feature, or what type of geologic features are on the ground that are related to tectonics cause these drainage patterns, right? So like volcanoes, obviously tectonically derived, right? The next one that we have is rectangular drainage. And this one's really simple to describe without any visuals. Basically, your stream makes 90-degree bends, right angle bends.
It's all dug by robots.
Exactly. Canals, robots dug the canals, and yes. No, this is actually bedrock derived. You see it it's also tectonically too, but things called joints, right? Jointing. And these are cracks in the rock that come from pressure, right? It's...
I'm just sorry. I'm laughing because you said joints and crack rock all in the same sentence.
All right. You know what? I'm trying to be professional here.
I'm listening. Carry on.
Where your mind's going.
I giggled. Leave it. Carry on. I am a 12-year-old boy. Carry on.
Jointing happens when there's pressure pushing in on the rock, and the rock cracks. It's kind of all cracking along in the same direction, right? But it's different from a fault. There's no actual offset or movement involved with these cracks. What ends up happening is with the rock, you get these joints, these cracks occurring at 90-degree angles, and as the water's flowing down, it gets stuck in those cracks, the joints, and that's why it makes these 90-degree bends. And the last one we'll just talk about real fast is trellis drainage. You can get these rivers that are stuck in ridge lines. So I guess the best way to describe this is like the Appalachian Mountains here on the east coast of the US are made of lots of ridges and valleys, these elongated ridges, these long elongated ridges. And in between the ridges, obviously you have the lowlands, the valleys. So if you're a river, you're flowing and you're stuck in between the two ridges, you have to stay in the valley. There's nowhere to go. The river's not going to flow up the ridge line and over. All right. So it's kind of stuck and they just flow. The rivers are stuck in the valleys and they flow along the valleys until there is a break in the ridge line, and then it can scoot over to the next valley or something like that. So usually with trellis drainage, you're looking for that ridge and valley type system. Like I said, we see that a ton here on the East Coast in the Appalachian Mountains. All right. How was that without any visuals? That was
yeah.
All right. Good enough.
Yeah, it was okay.
It was all right. Thanks. So there's other types of drainage patterns that rivers make, but like I said, we just wanted to just burn through that real fast.
I mean, drainage patterns are interesting and they're cool when you look at them on a map and you see them or whatever. And I know if there's
where are you going with this one, big guy?
if there's a fluvial geomorphologist listening, this might rankle their feathers, but it doesn't matter.
Well, Whoa. All right, mute him.
Yeah.
Get him out of here.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
and well, you know,
when
just
as you get more and more into the main system of the river, you're unaffected by the drainage pattern.
I understand where you're going to come from. I'm going to play devil's advocate with you.
Yeah.
All right. It's an easy way to figure out what's going on with the geology, the underlying geology.
Yeah, it's neat, and it tells a lot of information. But are you going to tell me that a dendritic drainage pattern versus a trellis drainage pattern is going to affect the type of river system, or how much drainage there is, or?
Well, no, you're not going to.
All right. Let's call it a night.
all right. Jesse wins. Good night.
No, but I know I'm being sort of
silly.
I'm being a little silly, and I'm just tired. I didn't get much sleep last night. I apologize. I don't mean to be such a jerk.
Yeah, sorry. We're doing this on a different night. Jesse normally raves on Thursday nights, so
it's Friday night. Oh, he's up last.
Yeah.
Night. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thursday.
Red Bulls and
yeah.
So.
Nothing better during a pandemic than a foam party.
Yeah, it was a Purell foam.
Yeah.
My eyes.
I can see clearly now.
That
tastes like burning.
That's me being a little grumpy. Yeah, drainage pattern matter.
No, I understand. So yes, and gradient. We did talk about factors that affect flow velocity.
How does that affect
earlier
the lakes?
Affect.
It can cause an inflection, I guess.
Yes.
It changes course. Yeah.
So, what do you guys? We got this one thing here, but factors that affect. I just said it too.
I'll take over. So there's really only a few things that are going to influence.
There you go.
the flow velocity of a fluvial system.
Yeah, one of them is gradient, and we talked about that. How if you're in the mountains,
the gradient,
it's fast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's the shape of the channel.
Ooh, okay. See, what Chris, Jesse, and I were talking about this earlier in the week. I'm like, rivers, yeah, water flows downhill. Done. And I was vetoed quickly, but yes. So shape of the channel also affects it.
Mm-hmm. So it. Oh, do you want to go into this, Jesse?
No, I've already dug my hole.
No.
Just float me down the river on my pyre.
I will shoot flaming arrows at you.
Yeah.
What, is he up the creek without a paddle?
Yeah.
So we can go into this. It actually gets fairly complicated, and I have all this complicated stuff here, but I'm just going to try to make this simple. The cross-sectional shape of the channel affects how fast the velocity is of the water flowing through the channel. So by cross-section, I mean, if you take a slice, you slice the river like perpendicular to the direction it's flowing, and you're looking at that U-shaped channel that the river has. Basically, the shape of that can affect the velocity of the channel. We call this. You're looking at basically the amount of flow that makes contact with the edges of the stream channel, and just to make this simple, you can get frictional drag happening if you have a lot of surface area touching, or if you have a lot of ground touching the water, then that's actually going to, like I said, create frictional drag and slow it down.
Yeah, the wetted perimeter.
Yes, that's called the wetted perimeter. Sorry. I don't know. Should I get into this, or is this too?
No, but like if you're really wide and thin, it's going to be slow. If you're really narrow and deep, it's going to be fast.
It's going to be fast in the middle.
In the middle, yes.
Yeah. So velocity changes as you go from the edge of the channel boundary towards the middle, it goes faster and faster and faster.
That's why you don't see like white water rapid people on the Mississippi or the
They're called
Delaware or
rafters.
Those are just called tubers. They just sit in their tube and drink beers.
Drink beer,
Yeah.
Float a cooler down the river.
Exactly.
My kind of river adventure.
Exactly. Yeah. This isn't the White River in Idaho or anything like that. Like, because those rivers may be passing the same amount of cubic feet of water, but because of the shape, it is a vastly different velocity.
Mm-hmm. So moving on, the other thing that can affect the velocity is basically the channel, the roughness of the channel, how jagged, basically how rough is the edges of the channel. That once again, frictional drag, any type of frictional drag that's ultimately going to slow the river velocity down. The channel size also, we kind of talked about that channel size is kind of related to channel shape there. Your maximum river flow is going to happen at what's called bank full. That's right before the river channel overflows onto the floodplain. Right before you have a flood and it overflows.
If you've heard on the news where they talk about flood stage, flood stage is right above bank flow.
Yeah,
overflows its banks, it is now flooding. And so whenever you see, if you watch the news or something and they talk about the flood stage, it's what they're talking about. They know the level it is because they know how high it has to go to spill over the banks.
And there's a lot of work too that they each township develops flood maps to figure, and you're not supposed to build within the zone of the 100-year flood, which means statistically that's the size of the flood. Well, that's the size of the flood.
You have a 1% chance that it's going to happen that year.
Yes. Like statistically, it happens once every 100 years. So
yes, it's a tricky statistic. You have a 1% chance every year of that flood happening,
and they're redoing a lot of the flood maps
because of climate change.
Stuff's changed,
and there's been some changes to the National Flood Insurance Program, which is a whole different can of worms.
And that's an interesting story, because back in the day, you used to be able to buy flood insurance from like companies like Liberty Mutual or I don't know. You used to be able to buy flood insurance, and then insurance companies realized there's no money in flood insurance. They abandon flood insurance. There's no, so the US government had to step in and say like, okay, like we will offer people flood insurance. And then it became, okay, you have to buy flood insurance if you live within yada, yada, yada feet of a flood zone. And if you don't, then you don't, I'm sorry, you don't have to, but if you don't, you just don't have insurance, and then your house gets washed away and that's it.
For a long time, and I think this is one of the changes, if you wanted a mortgage, you had to buy.
Yes. If you buy within a certain flood stage, you have to.
Once you pay your house off, you can get rid of the insurance.
No, I think you have to. I want to say because this is part of the problem, and oversimplifying things a lot here, is that it was developed because there was all of this flooding in the Mississippi Valley in like the 30s. It's half the reason we have the Tennessee Valley Authority. Part of it was to control flooding. Part of it was to electrify that region of the country, to put hydroelectric dams. But it got adapted for coastal use, and so you have these areas, especially in recent years, that are just getting hammered by hurricanes, and a lot of the houses that are because it's a government program, it's highly subsidized, and so you have houses that are getting this relatively cheap insurance, and then a hurricane comes through and it wipes out a $2 million home. And so it's essentially in the past 10 or 15 years with all of these hurricanes, it just broke the system.
And some people some houses are they're saying, no, you can no longer be insured. And it's becoming an issue because you're like, what are you saying? Like, this is my home. And it's like, well, you've been flooded out 3 times in the last decade. So,
and that's New Jersey did that where they they changed, the level at which your house has to be raised from 3 feet to 6 feet now. So all new construction, it has to be at least 6 feet off.
So yeah, they, over some people worry about over government influence. And I get that, like, oh, my grandma can't afford to raise her house to 6 feet. But at the same time, climate change is happening, and your grandma's house is going to be flooded. It might not have been flooded for the last 80 years, but it's going to be flooded in the next 20 years.
And that's the thing, like, it's not going to take a hurricane to flood it anymore. You're just going to have like a normal winter storm roll through.
Yeah.
And a storm that may have, put 6 inches on the ground is now going to be
Well, you know what? One other thing too, it's not just climate change, it's continued urbanization as well, which can cause more flooding.
Exactly. Like we talked about earlier with the over impervious surface.
Yeah.
So if cities, that's another reason that they're looking, I guess certain cities are looking to redo their 100-year flood maps, is because the cities have grown and now maybe there's a lot more parking lot areas and stuff like that. And that water's just jumping right into the river really fast. And then levels go up really fast. The river can't handle it. So that's just another thing too. So more,
nice.
Once again, another anthropogenic influence.
Yeah. And it's interesting in cities in the Northeast, for instance, Philadelphia, like if you own a big chunk of land with impervious surfaces, your water bill no longer is how much water you use, it's how much impervious surface you have.
Yeah.
So like if you own a parking lot, your water bill is astronomical, even though you don't use any water, because that runoff goes into the wastewater treatment plant and has to be serviced. So they're trying to hit you where it hurts, I guess, in your wallet. And our Patreon Maddie says internet research says if you don't have a mortgage, you don't have to be forced to buy flood insurance.
So
yes, that is correct for a lot of things. Like if you don't have a mortgage, you don't technically need to buy like title insurance or any type of insurance. However, that also means you're not insured. So yes, you save a little bit of money not paying for insurance, but you're not insured. So,
all right, let's. That took a turn. I didn't realize you were talking about.
Hey, listen.
I was wondering when I mentioned the 100-year flood. I was like, "Oh, this is going off." I knew this was going off script, but no, that was cool. That was a cool part to add to the podcast. I got some. I think this next section here, I want to talk about this because we'll have a lot of really fun facts here. And first, I want to talk about the term discharge of a river. Okay. And so discharge is basically the volume of water moving through the river or stream. Doesn't even have to be a river, moving through the stream. The volume of water moving through the stream per time. We measure it in
per unit time.
Unit time. Thank you. I really flubbed that one there. I know what it means. I swear to God. So
yeah. So cubic feet per second or cubic miles per year, or however you want to do it.
Yeah. So usually it's the rivers are cubic feet per second or cubic meters per second. Okay. So with that, now we know the term discharge. I have a list here of the top 10 largest rivers on Earth by discharge. This isn't by length. This is by just how much water is flowing out of these rivers. All right.
Can I try to name all 10?
Yeah, you looked at a list already.
Shoot. All right. I was going to rattle them off real quick and look like an expert. But go ahead. Fine.
So I don't know. We could do a whole podcast just going through the top 10 here. But how do you guys want to break this out? What do you think we should do?
I'll do 10 through 7.
All right, go ahead.
All right. The Piranha River in Brazil and Paraguay, Argentina flows into the Atlantic. It's about 3,030 miles long. Discharge 526,000 cubic feet per second. Holy cow. Fun fact, the only other longer river in South America is, we'll leave that for next.
Don't forget to give Chris did the conversion rate of cubic feet per second here, because it's tough to picture that in your head.
Oh,
Well-
yes. That's 14,900 meters cubed per second.
No.
Or
No.
2,980 elephants per second.
Yes.
Holy cow, that's a lot of elephants per second.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost
Right.
3,000 elephants per second getting dumped out of the Piranha River there.
Almost. But
Almost.
the Lena River in
Lena.
Siberia, which
Lena.
flows
Lena.
north, Lena River.
Okay.
which
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I
flows
got really excited there. I'm sorry. Hold on. Go. I
flows
got
northish. The length is shorter. It's only 2,668 miles long, 11th in the world. It has a discharge of 3,100 elephants per second.
Yeah, let's just leave it with the elephants per second.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fun fact, permafrost underlies most of its catchment, about 77%. Then we have the MISSISSI.
Hold on. Stop.
What?
Hold the phone, Joan. All right. There is there's a misnomer out there that all the rivers flow towards the equator, right? And I just want to let you know that is not true at all. Rivers flow downhill, and that's it. The Lena River in Siberia is a perfect example. It actually flows north through Russia into the Arctic Ocean. So that's my 2 cents. I get a lot of people saying, like rivers in the northern hemisphere have to flow south. No, they don't.
That's what I just said. It flows north.
You said it flows north, but I just wanted to let everyone know you don't have to have a. I'm sorry. All right, you kind of hit a pet peeve there of mine.
I'm very, very sorry.
One of my pet peeve is that it's called Lena and not Lena.
Yeah, you yelled at me 4 times.
Yeah.
Yes.
I get that from Ilya in our department.
Sorry, Ilya.
The Lena River. You have to say
Lena.
Oh, it's Lena.
Yeah.
Lena, like Helena.
Lena. Okay.
You would say.
All right,
All
Steve. Go ahead. Number 8. Number 8 on the list.
This Mississippi. Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
A lot of S's and I's in there.
Yeah. MISSISSIPPI. Mississippi River in the United States with some tributaries in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Good day. Flows into the Gulf of Mexico. Length is 2,320 miles. Discharge is 593,000 cubic feet per second, or approximately 3,360 elephants per second. Fun fact, second longest river in the United States behind the Missouri River, which is
What,
Yeah.
you're not a fan of the Missouri River?
no, I disagree with that fact.
Yeah.
Because the Missouri runs into the Mississippi. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, the second largest drainage system in North America behind the Hudson Bay drainage system. So, which is pretty cool because it's pretty much a big giant chunk of the United States.
Mhm.
The Orinoco, like I said, Orinoco River in Colombia and Venezuela flows into the Atlantic Ocean. Length is 2,250 kilometers, or about 1,400 miles. Discharge 600,000 cubic feet per second, which sounds a little too on the nose if you think about it. And honestly, 3,400 elephants per second. Come on, it sounds like it's an estimate. But the fun fact is the mouth of the Orinoco is documented by Christopher Columbus on August 1st, 1498, during his third voyage. That's crazy. 1498 was his third voyage. 1492 was his first. That's crazy.
I think that was his last one too.
Hey, real fast. Let's that fact that you disputed about the length of the Missouri versus Mississippi River.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the Mississippi River is 2,320 miles long, and the Missouri. So let's see, 2320. The Missouri, the length of that is 2,341 miles long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
But my point is the Missouri goes into the Mississippi.
the
So is it
Mississippi,
all the Mississippi or is it all the Missouri? That's
No,
my
it's
point.
the Missouri.
I'm going to go to the headwaters of the Mississippi and dig a ditch that's 22 miles longer. Sticking up for Old Man River.
I
You
like
know
it.
how long it's going to take to dig a 22-mile ditch? Come on.
Listen,
I've got
they
time.
got 16 miles on the Erie Canal. Come
I
on, they
haven't
can do
left
it.
my house in 10 months. Time.
All right.
Yeah. So, what was I going to say? Oh, Christopher Columbus. He had 4 voyages. 1502 was his last one. But whatever.
Yeah.
Supposedly, there's. I didn't read into this fully, but I saw something because I fact checked. I looked it up, and supposedly Christopher Columbus did some not nice things on that 3rd voyage. That
He is the worst.
He did
Ugh.
not nice things on lots of the voyages. So yeah, I'm not celebrating him. I'm just impressed that he made it back and forth that many times in that short of a period. I guess I just don't know my history. All right, so who's got 6, 5, 4, 3,
I'll take it over.
2, 1.
Okay, so we got another Russia at number 6. We have the Yenisei River. That's in Russia. That once again that flows north.
Yenisei.
It almost sounds like Hennessy.
Yeah. And yeah.
But so once again, that's in Russia. That flows north into the Arctic Ocean. See, it doesn't have to flow south. That is 3,487 kilometers long, or 2,167 miles, and that has a discharge of 614,000 cubic feet per second. What is that in elephants per second? That's 3,480 elephants per second are flowing out of that river.
That's about an elephant per kilometer.
Ooh, that's a lot of elephants.
That's a lot of elephants coming out of that river in a second. Fun fact: that the average area. I'm sorry, not the average area. The average volume of an elephant is 5 cubic meters, and that is our definition of an elephant for this calculation.
Another fun fact of this river. This river is partially fed by Lake Baikal, which is the largest freshwater lake by volume, and it contains anywhere from 20 to 30% of the world's fresh surface water.
Wow.
Lake Baikal, yeah.
Packed in up there, huh?
It's
also
a very deep lake, right?
I was going to say it's also the world's deepest lake.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is deep.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fairly pristine.
How deep is it?
Oh, almost a mile. 5,300.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, you think about the Great Lakes are like, hundreds, 300-400 feet deep at the deepest. This is over 3,000.
Over
Wow.
5,000.
5,280 feet.
Yeah, it's 5,000. Its max is 5,387. It's an ancient rift valley, and that's why it's so deep. And it's considered one of the world's oldest lakes. It's the 7th largest by surface area.
How about that? 5,000 feet deep for a lake. That makes Tahoe. I just looked it up. Lake Tahoe. This is totally off topic, but Lake Tahoe is a maximum depth of 1,645 feet. So this is 5 times deeper than Lake Tahoe.
And according to Maddie, our Patreon, Lake Superior is 1,300 feet deep.
So what? And the deepest in North America is Crater Lake, right?
I don't know what the deepest lake in North America is off the top of my head.
Crater Lake is it's the deepest in the U.S. No, what's the lake up in northern Canada? That's deeper, but it is it's just under 2,000 feet deep. But let me tell you, Lake Tahoe is probably the coldest lake I've ever been in. It is cold.
The Great Slave Lake is 2,000 feet deep in.
No, I've been in some spring-fed ponds that were like.
Oh
chilly.
yeah, I hear people go diving in the natural springs in Florida. Whew, I hear that.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about
A natural spring in Florida, it's got to be like 50 degrees
Yeah,
Come on,
It's
60
chilly.
days.
It's chilly. It's
I was
not what you
I
think
also
it's
was there in June, and it was being fed from snowpack on the mountain.
That's cold.
Yeah,
That's cold.
exactly.
Yeah, that's cold. Yeah.
I don't want to hear about a lake in Florida.
Okay. Hey, guess what? Number 5 on this list is the Ganges River. All right, and that flows through India and Bangladesh. That flows to the Indian Ocean, or ultimately the Indian Ocean. What's the Gulf? The Gulf.
It goes to the Bay of
Bay,
Bengal.
Bengal. Bay of Bengal. Thank you. I didn't write that down the outline. All right, so that's basically 2,500 kilometers long, or about 1,569 miles long.
Yeah, but how many elephants per second? That's what I'm
Oh, well, the answer is 3,740 elephants per second. So right now, so the top, we're at number 5 right now. So number 10 through 5 have all been hovering around 3,000, right? So like the Piranha River was number 10. That's basically 2,900. Oh, just shy of 3,000. So all these numbers about 3,000. In the 3,000s for elephants per second. We're up to 3,700 elephants per second. Number 4. Hey, Jesse, what's this fun fact about the Ganges River?
This is one of my favorite.
Jesse wrote down this outline. Fun fact: corpse eating turtles. So, please explain.
Nope, I just kind of want to leave it there. So the Ganges is it's known as Mother Ganges, and it's a very religious river for people in India. I want to say it's Hindu. So what they do is, well, it's super polluted, right? Just because so many people live on it, and the monsoons just drive so much overland flow across the surface of the land into the river, across the drainage basin. But anyway, so the part of the reason it's polluted is because it's such a religious river. One of the traditions in the Hindu culture is bathing in the river can absolve your sins, and then if you die, if you're cremated and your ashes are placed in the river, you'll achieve some sort of salvation. What this sort of led to is that the river itself got polluted with tons of human ash, up to 50 tons of human ash a day.
Wow. It's a lot of people.
Yeah. And a lot of these, and it's human and animals. You want your animals to achieve salvation too. And their corpses, part of it is that during these cremation ceremonies, some of these crematoriums, are sort of just pyres that have been set up on the river. They're not, crematoria where it's a blast furnace or something like that. And so a lot of times you're not cremating the entire body, and so you're left with a lot of human parts. I don't know the way to be tactful about this.
Remains.
Partially burned bodies in the river. Human remains. So close. And so it became sort of a problem in recent years, in the 2010s, or no, it was in the 90s. They started realizing, yes, we have a problem with just body parts in the river piling up. And so one of the solutions was the release of these flesh-eating turtles.
I did not expect that story to take that turn.
Right.
Michelangelo, Leonardo.
Yeah. Trionyx gangitis. My Latin is awful. It's a soft-shelled turtle species that's actually found in the Ganges, and it had sort of demonstrated that it has sort of this preference for flesh. And they realized this because they saw this native turtle species that would come up to these funeral pyres and start nibbling on flesh or whatever. And so they ended up releasing 25,000 of these turtles into the Ganges over the 90s into the early 2000s. And they tried to raise them on this diet of dead fish so they would develop a taste for human flesh.
Wow, they're going all out with this.
And basically, like, they found they eat everything except the bones. Like 10 adult turtles can consume an entire human body in 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's like mobster stuff.
Yeah,
like, oh no, it's just my turtle tank.
But anyway,
I know from Guy Ritchie movies the pigs,
exactly.
Yeah.
So they spent like $30 million on this, and they spent a lot of money raising and making sure that it would work.
But
as a theory, but once they released the turtles, they didn't really follow up with anything. And it just sort of fell apart pretty quickly because most of the turtles were poached and eaten, or they died from the pollution. So anyway, they've put in place more effective policies that don't dump a half-burned body in. They've gone to the places. Yeah. They found that actually, if we just go and tell people, hey, if you're having this funeral and you're cremating a body, make sure it's fully cremated. Just anyway, that's my fun fact.
All right. Corpse eating turtles, Ganges River. I don't know how to follow up with that, but I will. Number 4 on the list is the nearby Brahmaputra River. So both of these rivers drain off of the Himalaya mountains, the Ganges and Brahmaputra. Brahmaputra flows through China, India, Bangladesh, and Tibet. The length of this one is 4,696 kilometers or 2,918 miles. And the discharge, 3,960 elephants per second. All right. Which brings us a lot of elephants. But everything so far has been under 4,000 elephants per second. Now we're going to see these numbers really start to jump up.
I just real quick, the Brahmaputra, I'm just looking at a map of it. Does it flow? It sort of flows around the Himalaya mountains. You can trace some of it on
around the western edge and along the southern end.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yep. All right. Jesse really likes the geometry of that.
Yeah.
All right. So top 3 largest rivers in terms of discharge in the world.
Drum roll.
Well, no drum roll for number 1, but the Yangtze River in China, and this flows into the East China Sea. It has a length of 6,300 kilometers. That's much bigger than the previous rivers we've been talking about.
Super long.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big guy, which is 3,900 miles. The discharge, we are now over 4,000 elephants per second. We're 4,360 elephants per second. It's 770,000 cubic feet per second, or about 21,800 cubic meters per second. But
now I know
4,300 elephants per second.
We're joking about elephants per second, but think about it. Elephants per second.
The last time you were at the zoo, right? How big an elephant
per second? Over 4,000 elephants every second. That's incredible.
Yeah. It's a lot of elephants. Elephants. All right. Fun fact. The Yangtze River, not only is it the 3rd biggest river in the world in terms of its discharge, it is also the 3rd longest river in the world. So if you ever, Yangtze, number 3. All right. The Congo River. This might be one of my new favorite rivers. I learned a lot about 15 minutes before we started recording the podcast about this river. All right. So it's in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's 4,700 kilometers long, or 2,920 miles long. It flows into the Atlantic Ocean. Its discharge is...
Hang on. Remember, the Yangtze was 4,300-ish.
Yeah.
This
is
one
almost
is
this is nearly, well, it's not exactly double, but it's pretty close. 7,928 elephants per second. It's over 1 million. It's 1.4 million cubic feet per second.
I'm going to start measuring my gas mileage in elephants per second. Wait, carry on.
So a couple little fun facts about this. It is number one, the world's deepest river. It is 220 meters deep, or 720 feet deep.
Holy
That's crazy.
crap.
That's a deep river, right, fellas?
Yeah.
So
that's like a lake that happens to be flowing.
That's a really freaking deep river.
Yeah.
All right. Scientists have calculated that the entire Congo Basin accounts for 13% of global hydropower potential. Let me read that one more time. That one basin, the Congo River Basin, accounts for 13% of all the world's hydrologic power potential. All right. That's crazy. This would provide sufficient power for all of sub-Saharan Africa's electricity needs from that one river basin. Another fun, the Congo River is really cool. So it also is the only major river to cross the equator twice.
Neat. So it must have high relief. It must have a ton of relief in order for it to generate that much hydroelectric power.
Yes.
That's my guess. I understand we don't have that stat, but yeah.
You got something. Hold on.
Just that depth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think about it.
Yeah. So we'll come back to the Congo River in a couple minutes because there's another really cool fact. But we need to talk about number one, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the drum roll right now. The number one
undisputed champion.
Undisputed champion.
Well,
yeah.
In terms of discharge.
For discharge.
Right.
In terms of discharge.
Discharge.
In terms of discharge, is the Amazon River, right?
All right. So again, number 3 was 4,300 elephants per second. Number 2 was basically 8,000 elephants per second.
Yeah.
Number 1 is
42,475 elephants per second.
So like 5 times the amount of elephants per second as number 2.
And so the Congo River had a discharge of 1.4 million cubic feet per second. The Amazon River has a discharge of 7.5 million cubic feet per second. Holy shnikes, that is a lot. 4,200. I'm sorry, not 4,200. 42,000 elephants per second of water is being dumped out. You know, if people only listen to like the second half of the podcast and hear us talking about elephants coming out of a river, they're going to be really, really lost.
First of all, who only listens to the second half of the podcast? Second of all, shame on them.
Yeah. All right. The Amazon represents 20% of the global riverine discharge into the ocean. Wow. 20% of all the river discharge into the oceans just the ocean. I'm sorry. I guess that's the Atlantic Ocean, comes from the Amazon alone.
Just that one river.
One river. Yeah. 1/5.
But if you look at that catch basin, it's gigantic. And you think about the amount of rainfall that it gets, it's also gigantic. So, the Amazon basin, it's the largest drainage basin in the world. It has an area of about 7 million square kilometers, or 2.7 million square miles. It's pretty big. All right. We got some honorable mentions.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't talk about, before we get into the honorable mentions, I just want to say that I've actually found several where we got this list from. I should say that I found several lists of the largest rivers in the world, and they tend to base the largest rivers in the world based on discharge. And so I guess it depends on how you calculate your averages, where you get your data from, and things like that.
What time of year, all that stuff.
Yeah, you might look at another list and might say like, the list that I found isn't exactly the same thing as what the Flannelcasters are talking about.
So what Chris is saying is, come at me, bro.
Yes, get at me. So this is but they're all pretty similar. All right. It's actually really hard to, come up with an exact top 10. There's some controversy about some of this stuff. And, this is just kind of a generalized thing, we're kind of doing for fun here. All right. With that said, just don't send me any emails saying, "Oh, this other website said that the Ganges was number 3." Or
No, please send Chris those emails.
You can send them to steve@geologyflannelcast.com. All right. So moving on, we have some honorable mentions. You can't talk about the largest rivers in the world and not mention the Nile River, right?
Mhm.
So apparently there is some controversy about the length of these rivers, right? And I guess it just depends on how far upstream do you consider the start of your river, right? And so some people go back and forth about this, but
Like the Missouri and the Mississippi.
yes, you're very upset about those 20 miles. Yeah. All right. So the Nile River, it flows through a lot of countries in Africa: Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda, Congo, Kenya, Tanzania. Yeah, sorry. Rwanda and
Burundi.
Thank you. So the Nile River is 6,650 kilometers long, or 4,130 miles long. But there is so most people would say the Nile River is the longest river in the world. But fun fact, there's a group of Brazilian scientists who claim that the Amazon River is actually longer than the Nile. Let's see. And looks like the discharge, actually, these numbers don't look like it lines up right, but the discharge doesn't look like it says, actually, no, I'm sorry, that is correct. 2,800 cubic meters per second of discharge. So, that doesn't even come, what it was, number 10 was almost 15,000 cubic meters per second, the Piranha River. So the Nile River doesn't really have, it doesn't even compare.
No, that's like an elephant.
Yeah. I could actually do the math if you guys want to, cover me for about 30 seconds.
So we have
566 elephants. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. What are you going to say?
Nope. Carry on.
All right.
I was trying to stall for you.
Stall. Yeah. Thank you. 566 elephants. So, all right. Fun fact about, I didn't know about this, and it makes sense, but basically back in the day, back in the old school day, when Pangea was a thing, there is some thought that the Amazon River and the Congo rivers were part of the same, like a cohesive river. And so it kind of, it's really, really cool talking, I guess reversing the tectonics. And but yeah, there's looks like some people feel that these two rivers, there's some evidence that shows that the Congo River and the Amazon River may have been connected at one point. It produced a river around 6,000 miles long, or about 10,000 kilometers long.
Crazy.
It's a big river. That is a really big river.
I mean, you think about Pangea, it was pretty big, so that would make sense.
Yeah, it was okay.
So the Nile is.
It was no Gondwana land.
That's crazy. The Nile is 4,100 miles long, and they're saying that this was 6,000 miles long. It's a big river.
Yep.
So,
yeah. So we got different types of river morphology, right?
So morphology just means shape. If you think, what does morphology mean? Basically, just means shape.
Yeah.
So you could have a straight river. Usually we see those things have a high gradient, so very, very steep setting. You're only getting incising occurring. You're like in mountainous highlands.
And incising, basically you're cutting down.
Yeah. Or you can get them like along coastal plains where you have low to no gradient. Basically, you're low energy setting, and you just got no energy. Very, very low energy setting. So
You're
that means
bleh.
Yeah. So
me every day.
Moving on, we have braided rivers. braided rivers are cool. I think they're really pretty.
I like braided.
Yeah. You have high sediment load, so lots and lots of sediment in these rivers. Variable discharge. One of the coolest things I saw, and you hear about this, and it doesn't register until you actually see it. So I was out a couple of years ago. I was driving through Colorado. I was out in Great Sand Dunes National Park, and they got a couple sand dunes out there, give or take. Right? It's pretty great. And there is, I want to say it's a Sangre de Crisco Mountains, right next to the park there. I might be wrong, but I think those are the mountains right on the edge of the park. Anyways, so you have these giant sand. You have 1,000 foot. There's the highest sand dune's like 1,000 feet tall at Great Sand Dunes National Park. It's huge. So of course you got a crap ton of sediment there, right? And you have this drain, and you have the drainage coming off the mountains right there, and you have there's a little braided system right there. And it was the craziest thing. We're sitting there, and there's like kids like playing in the river and stuff like that, and it's a pretty cool place to hang out. But you could actually see the pulses of water. You could see that variable. It's just the water alone. The discharge of the water was just it pulse. You see this flux of water come down, and then it would stop for a little bit, and then the next pulse would come down maybe 5 minutes later. It was pretty wild seeing that like in person.
Yeah. I've actually, on a much, much smaller scale, I've seen it on construction sites where you pile up a bunch of sediment off to the side, and then it rains, and you can see this braided system coming off of these sediment piles essentially. And then it gets down to where it's a much lower gradient, and then it channelizes or it distributes. So yeah, pretty
wow.
interesting.
Yeah, and you can actually, you can see a lot of neat drainage stuff at construction sites.
Yeah. But then we have Meander, which is at a low gradient, right? What does that mean?
Means the river's meandering around.
Yep. So
lots of weaving, bends.
Yeah.
A snake pattern.
Yep. So I actually looked up the etymology of the word meander. It comes from the Greek meandros, which is an old name for a river in Asia Minor, which is also known as the meandres. Implies a winding course and a lazy movement, and is still sometimes associated with rivers. Yes, it is. So
not sometimes.
Not sometimes. It
is.
A
lot of times, yeah.
So because I was wondering, we've all heard the term meander around. I wasn't sure if that described rivers or if rivers was describing the motion of wandering around aimlessly. And it turns out it was all from the river. So it was from this one river in Asia Minor where it basically was flowing back and forth. And, you have a low gradient. So it's just cut banks and point bars and, cutting into the landscape, so to speak. And so I don't know. I thought it was,
yeah, it's cool. It's really neat to see where this stuff comes from. And there's one last type of river morphology, and that is anastomosing. Maybe some people haven't heard of this one before. People don't really talk about anastomosing unless you're like an actual geologist, and then talk about it. But a lot of people aren't aware of this category of river morphology. And anastomosing, you see these in low gradient settings, but they have these stable, cohesive banks. And so you have many channels within the river system. It's kind of similar to a braided system, but not really. It's a little different. Braided systems, the channels are moving around and they're always bopping. And so it's changing. It's a very, very dynamic setting. Whereas your anastomosing setting tends to have these multiple channels, lots and lots of channels, but it's more stable. It's not changing.
Yeah. So in a braided system, the channel itself has it splits apart and comes back together, and splits apart and comes back together. But from one year to the next, where you have these splits and reunions changes. In an anastomosing system, there are much more stable channels that are splitting and joining back together and splitting and joining back together. That, if you go from year to year, where the splits and reunions don't change.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. much more stable. Yeah. So and you tend to see these, I guess, along coastal plain type settings, low gradient, right? You wouldn't, coastal plains pretty close to the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty
So
flat terrain.
anastomosing comes from anastomosis, a medical or Latin term, Greek, meaning outlet opening, ana, up on or upon, and stoma, mouth, to furnish with mouth. Thus, the syllable conjugate. Anyway, basically, just like you
really
said,
enjoying that.
That was
coastal plain. It's a mouth of the river opening up and just spewing out into these distributaries, I guess. Could you call it?
Yeah, you get these what are sometimes called distributary systems.
DFS.
Where they're splitting apart. This is one of my pet peeves. Rivers start at the headwaters and they end at the mouth. It just, I don't know why it makes me so angry.
because
why doesn't it end at
why isn't it
the
foot?
foot or the tail or something?
The toe of the glacier,
Toe of the glacier.
Yeah.
You could have a bird foot delta. It's a foot.
There you
go. Just gets me.
So this is our petition to rename the the terminal downstream portion of the river to the foot of the river and not in the mouth of the river.
There you go.
Because you think of like mouth, like things go into your mouth, right? If things are coming out of your mouth, it means you're regurgitating, you're sick, right? Something went wrong if stuff's coming out of your mouth, right?
Stuff is coming out of our mouths currently, Chris.
Well, words. I guess words don't come out of your mouth. Air.
But yes. Some people listening might say like this is just regurgitation. But anyway. No, I feel like we hit rivers hard.
I hope you felt like you had a torrent of information coming at you.
Ooh, I love it. A flood, if you will.
Many elephants per seconds of information.
Yes. No, and again, we, sometimes we do topics, sometimes we just do current events. Send us emails. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. And when you're sending us comments, buy a coffee mug or a sticker or a t-shirt or check out the formatting formula.
You can check all that fun stuff out at geologyflannelcast.com. That is our website. Yeah. So I guess we probably won't have that many links we'll throw some links up there. Any links that we talk about from the show, we post up there on the website.
Real quick, what's your favorite river?
Oh, let's do it.
You know what? Damn, I knew you were going to ask this. I was like, I hope he doesn't ask what my favorite river is.
I think Jesse knows my favorite river, and I'm thinking it's pretty close to his favorite river.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is, can I say it?
Yeah.
All right. The Susquehanna River.
It's a good one.
And why is it my favorite? I do believe it is the oldest river on the planet.
It's at least one of them.
Yeah. And I don't have any evidence to back this up other than the fact that the Appalachian Mountains are pretty old, and the Susquehanna River cuts through them.
Dissects them.
So it had to be there before those mountains.
Yep. Anywhere from 260 to 325 million years old.
At least.
Yeah. If not older.
Right?
Mississippi really takes the name Old Man River. Mississippi's got nothing on.
No, Mississippi is like the younger stepchild of the Susquehanna.
How about the we talked about this briefly before the show, but the New River,
it's new,
super, super old, but that cuts through the Appalachians, and that's the only I'm pretty sure it is. It's the only river that starts east of the Appalachian, on the east of the Appalachian, cuts through the Appalachians and actually drains into the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah.
What about the French Broad? Oh no, yeah.
That's in Asheville.
Yeah, but the Susquehanna starts
goes up to
west
Knoxville,
west of the Appalachians and ends up in the Atlantic.
Yeah, well, it's going to the east, but I'm saying the New River's going to the west. It cuts across. But does the French?
It goes. New River flows west.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it hooks up with the Ohio River.
the Ohio.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to stop talking before I dig myself into.
No, but anyway, there's some. But we haven't heard what Jesse's contribution to this.
Mine is easy. It's the Schuylkill River. Schuylkill is.
Nobody outside of the Mid-Atlantic states knows what you're talking about right now.
Well, they should.
It's the orange one, right?
It is.
It might be at certain times.
It is orange. It fueled the Industrial Revolution.
It did actually.
In the States, at least in the U.S.
Another fun fact: the Cuyahoga River in Ohio. It's gonna. It caught fire. Caught fire 3 times in the. I want to say the 60s and 70s. I think somewhere.
Listen, that's what fueled the environmental revolution. No, but I'm pretty sure that's why I have a job right now. So,
right.
But
Cuyahoga River.
But back to the Schuylkill. Schuylkill River is a major river. First of all, it's a confluence of the Delaware and the Schuylkill is where Philadelphia is, the cradle of liberty. Thank you very much. But also, like Jesse said, if millions and millions of, probably trillions of tons of coal that fired the Industrial Revolution, that fired, the American Revolution, came out of the Schuylkill River. So came down the Schuylkill River, I should say. So
canal. So it's funny today when you go, like if you're going to the international airport, you go across the Platte Bridge there. If you're going down 95, the Girard Point Bridge, you can see the confluence of the Schuylkill and the Delaware. But when European settlers came up the Delaware from present day Delaware and Christiana and whatnot, they settled in the Philadelphia region. And they knew the Schuylkill was there and they knew the Delaware was where it was, but they couldn't find the confluence because it was so wooded. And there's a few small little islands there, Hog Island and the other one.
That's where hoagie comes from.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was so wooded, and so Schuylkill is an Old Dutch word. Old Dutch, the language, not just like an old word. I mean, it's old, but that basically means like hidden river or hidden creek.
Neat.
Oh, another fun fact about rivers is in Dutch,
Kiel.
Yeah. So like in where you had like a lot of Dutch influence in the United States when it was being settled, like up in New York. That's why you have like the Catskills, a lot of
Catterskill and
so that's Dutch. Yeah. It's means, I believe it just means river, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So another fun fact about rivers, man. If you guys are complaining that there wasn't enough facts for you guys in this podcast,
nothing but fun facts.
You got to check your head. I don't know. You got to find a different podcast.
Fun facts and real facts. I'm telling you.
I tell you what. Yeah. If you didn't think there was enough fun facts or real facts, look in the mirror because that's not you.
We did our part this week.
We did. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Thank you so much to our Patreons, especially some of our fact-checking Patreons as we podcast live. So thank you. If you'd like to become a Patreon, check us out on Patreon, Geology Flannelcast. And we have Instagram now at Geology Flannelcast, where we changed our picture once in 6 years. But we're getting on it.
Let's talk about this Instagram thing real fast. Yeah. I think if it actually, never mind. That's so much. Yes, we're working on.
We're working on it.
Revamping our Instagram.
Yes, we're actually trying to update it. I logged on. I'm using air quotes right now to Instagram because I'm old, and I'm like, well, I don't even know how to do stuff. How do I it took me like 20 minutes to change a picture. So.
So Steve's learning.
We're slowly working.
Steve's trying to figure out the whole Insta thing, you know?
Yeah, Steve was born in the 70s, so it's a struggle. The struggle is real. So
come on, man. If Trump can do the whole Twitter thing
right.
like he's doing now, man, you can handle Instagram.
First of all, we're not even into that. Second of all, he's been banned from Twitter. So, but anyway, yeah, I'm learning. So we're gonna try it. We do have a Twitter at Geo Flannelcast. So, and we do have Facebook too. So check us out on Facebook. I'm old enough where I can know Facebook. So check us out on all these different platforms. Like us, love us. Check out
YouTube as well.
Yep. Oh, YouTube. Oh. When we talk about we're doing hand motions, you can actually see our hand motions.
Yes.
Yeah, it's glorious. So Chris does most of his podcasting without a shirt on. So check that out. So
take it or leave it.
Yeah. But yeah, check us out. Give us some likes. And it's January, which means you should join with some friends and listen to our podcast. That's terrible.
I like it.
I got it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good enough. All right. This was a long one. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We love you guys, and we will see you guys next week for another action-packed episode of the premier geology flannelcast out there on the interwebs, the Geology Flannelcast. Thanks a lot, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.